I guess people saw it, you know.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean, I was pretty lucky. I've gotten to work on a couple of the Hunger Games. I did The Beekeeper a couple of years ago, a Jason Statham action film. Worked on
Oh, what?
the sub.
All right.
Yeah,
Rolling out with the break of dawn. Canvas skies and the show goes on. Iron stakes and the hammer sound. Building dreams on this muddy ground. With sawdust running through our veins. We do it for the faces in the crowd. Step right up with R&B, 'cause this ain't just a show, it's circus history.
All right. Howdy, everyone, and welcome to Off the Rail Podcast, your podcast for everything circus. We're your off the rail ringmasters. I'm R. This is B. How you doing, B?
Doing pretty good. How are you, sir?
I'm doing awesome. Today's guest is his name is Brian, and he is a FX makeup artist and clown. Is that correct?
that is correct.
Cool. Well, I guess we'll start with the clown part. How did you? What got you into clowning? What's that road look like?
Wow, what got me into clowning? Well, I take it back to maybe 2, 3 years old. I grew up eating McDonald's, so Ronald McDonald was a huge
There you go.
influence on TV and promotional appearances. There were local Ronalds, and I don't know if I can say the name, but there was also a glam rock band that wore white grease paint, Stein's grease paint, and I thought they were clowns. My mom told me I was a big fan of this clown band, so my uncle would go see them in concert. He would bring back concert T-shirts. I'd wear them as pajamas when I'm a toddler. So I was always into these heroes with grease paint. Growing up in Chicago, I watched Bozo Circus, and of course Bozo at that time was Bob Bell, and then
Oh,
later
yeah.
Joey D'Oria. So Bozo, Ronald, and a glam rock band. Like I said, heroes were wearing white grease paint. I would go to Ringling Brothers Circus, see more clowns, and it was just always a thing in my life. So
Right
being a
on.
fan eventually led to Halloween makeups, playing with grease paint. I think I started off, my mom made me Dracula, and then another few years I was a Grim Reaper. And eventually
Oh,
I
wow.
put on a red nose, and I just thought, I think this is something I can get into. So I've had characters. I think I got my first Leon McBride Pro Nose about 30 years ago. And ever since, I've had a character or two, kind of always on call if the right occasion, parade, party, etc., should come up.
That's cool.
So did so
That's yeah.
did the clowning lead into the FX career?
They were sort of in tandem. I think I thought that the makeup thing was always just going to be a hobby, that I would always just do things at Halloween, um, for friends, costumes for myself. And I think it was when I was in college. I was an English and film major, and word got around that I would enter local costume contests, and I was the go-to guy for zombies and things like that. So
Nice.
eventually, somebody would say, "Hey, I need a dead body in a bathtub. I need an army of zombies coming out of a lake. I need a clown or a few clowns." And I just thought, I can do this. It just kind of stuck. So I would always have a clown character for a party or a gag or something. And then when I decided I needed to study makeup and special effects properly and go to school for it, when it came time to do my final um, sort of my graduate thesis makeup, I came up with a clown character. And at that time, there's sort of a whole generation raised on Pennywise, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, um,
Oh, yeah.
Krusty. So I created a
Oh,
character that was
yeah.
sort of this clown that didn't want to be a clown. Like, I'm a clown. What do you want from me? And I did some prosthetics, so you never would recognize that it was me. I looked like I was about 30 or 40 years older. The makeup was a little yellow, and I had stringy green hair, and I was Blotto the clown. And I came up with a backstory for this character, and then that sort of spiraled into a bigger story and a whole mythology. And I think shortly after I did this character, I actually went to pick up a friend at an airport in London who was coming to visit me, and I went in full clown makeup, but I was kind of my, clown that wasn't happy about being a clown. And a kid came up to me, and mom said, "Look, honey, a clown." And I felt terrible because I thought, I'm not that clown. I'm not. I'm not going to start juggling, and I was clearly a bit off. And I think it hit a chord with me. I realized, as much as I grew up with scary clowns and with alternative clowns, I kind of wanted to be a real clown, or the kind of clown that I grew up with. So I backed off of the prosthetics, and gradually Blotto became more traditional. If that makes sense. That's a kind of the nuts and bolts of it right there.
Sure. Right on. So
Very nice.
you're clowning. Do you teach clowning too, or?
Um, because I'm a special effects makeup artist, and the way it works is, if you work in TV and film, usually, especially in the States, you're in a union. I'm in a couple unions, a couple guilds. And the criteria to get into these guilds is normally you do more than just the prosthetics. You do beauty makeup, character makeup, period makeup. So even though my main focus is prosthetics, I do know theatrical and period makeup. So I end up teaching clown makeup mostly for union makeup artists. If I get a call to do a clown makeup class for somebody else, I can usually put together a program. It's mainly hands-on, but I probably spend, every time I teach, I spend at least an hour doing a PowerPoint presentation that's more than 80 photos, kind of examples of some of the best clowns, step-by-step elements of clowning, and then maybe some examples of ones that are not so great and why. Not to shame any particular clowns, but just to kind of hang on to some guidelines that sometimes, even with the proliferation of TikTok and internet clowns, headphone here, sometimes some of the guidelines or some of the recommended ideas for looks get a little lost. So when I teach, I go back to some of the old school rules that might have been applicable in Ringling and television and things like that. So any chance I have to share my passion for clowning, I love to teach, and whenever I can fit it in between jobs, I usually do.
Nice. Have you ever worked with Tom Savini?
Worked with him? No, I've met him. We have a lot of friends in common. So he was
That's cool.
he was
I
a
met him once.
big influence growing up. So it was a pretty cool thing to meet him and kind of get to pick his brain a little bit.
So is he? I guess he's part of what influenced you into makeup. Is he somebody you looked up to, or?
Yeah, at that time, when I was starting to get into makeup and realizing that it was more than just a hobby, for a lot of people, it starts off, you go to your local library, and usually the books that were available were Richard Corson's makeup book. You might find the Dick Smith makeup book, and you would definitely find the Tom Savini makeup book. He had
Right.
two,
Yeah.
Grand Illusions 1 and 2. So I got those, and there was so much approachable practical effects in his books. Things with, it was I think the first time I sculpted a prosthetic, made a mold of that prosthetic, cast it in latex and pulled it out and stuck it on. I got some of that from Tom's book. So prior to that,
Nice.
like a lot of people, you just paint latex on your face, maybe take some toilet paper and maybe some oatmeal or cornstarch or something, just kind of make yourself something. But the idea of pre-making an appliance, pre-making a prosthetic with a mold, that was sort of when I started to think, I think this is more than just a Halloween hobby. I think I could really dive in and learn this stuff. So at Tom's book, for a lot of people, it was a cornerstone.
That's
So where did
awesome.
that take you
Um,
off into your career next?
Well, after I graduated college, I went to a school in London called the Delamar Academy. So I did 1 year studying makeup, special effects, theater, beauty, hair. They call it the complete makeup artist. So I did a full 1 year course. About a week after I graduated that, I got my first job on Band of Brothers for HBO and
Oh,
BBC.
wow.
So that was baptism of fire. That was I learned more on set in my probably my first week and a half than I did in a year of makeup school.
Oh, I
So
bet. Wow.
you're kind of thrown to the wolves. I mean, I can say that the interview was probably the toughest interview I've ever had in my life. I think it was designed to either make me cry or angrily storm out the door, and I took it constructively. Like, I had a portfolio that, I was a week out of makeup school, so it wasn't anything to get excited about.
Right.
And the response I got was, well, maybe we could have you sweep the floors. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
A day later, I got a call saying that I'd be working 14-hour days back to back on two episodes, one in the morning, one in the afternoon, and it was not sweeping floors. It was making limbs that got blown off, buckets of
Oh,
guts,
yeah.
being on set. The attention to detail was incredible. I mean, HBO, it was my first HBO production, and I've done numerous ones since. But it was incredible, and I met artists there that I'm still friends with. This is a quarter of a century later, but
Wow.
that was really, really my foot in the door. And it made me realize, when you first start working, you think, okay, well, I've made it now. Now I'm with the big boys. But then there's 2 years that followed that where there was barely anything. So I go back to bartending and doing a lot of student films and music videos and just anything I could to stay active and stay busy. And it kind of prepared me that when you're a freelancer, especially in the arts, it's ups and downs. You never know. You could have a year where you're working nonstop, and then a year where you maybe have 3 days of work, unfortunately. But I did that. And then after I had a couple of years of experience under my belt, I decided it was time to move to LA, try Hollywood. Everybody wanted to get out there eventually. And I thought, well, let's
Right,
give it a
right.
shot. And my first interview when I got to Hollywood, kind of through a family connection, it ended up being with John Goodwin, who was head of makeup and effects on CSI. So
No
I went
way.
to
Wow.
I went to the original CSI, and I think we spent 5 hours just talking. And I picked his brain. I knew who he was. I was a huge fan of his work. I'd read a regular column that he did in a magazine called Makeup Artist Magazine. So we became friends. He was a dear mentor to me. And at the time, he said, I can't bring you on this show because it's union and you're not union yet. That was a riddle we were going to have to solve. But he did schedule an interview with me with Greg Nicotero from KNBFX. And this was quite a few years ago, but I
Wow.
remember Greg going through my portfolio and he goes, "Oh, zombies. I've done some zombies." And I kind of, he's done some of the zombies that I grew up with that have influenced me my whole life, and so I kind of felt like, that's he can't be too impressed with what he's seeing there. But he did bring me on, and I was able to work in the shop for a few months at KNBFX, and it might be doing graboid tentacles one day, fabricating. I think we did some
Oh.
starfish, painting some starfish and sea anemones for Ang Lee's Hulk. This is going back probably to 2003.
Wow.
Werewolf.
So you
Yeah.
did Tremors. You said Graboids. You did Tremors.
It may have been Tremors 5 or Tremors the series.
Yeah.
When you work in an effects shop, a lot of times there's multiple projects going on. So I was doing graboid eggs that had to be found, and like I said, it was either for a Tremors sequel or a
Yeah,
series,
that was
because
later on.
this was
Yep.
probably a good 12, 13 years after the original film, but there was
Right.
more
Yep.
Tremors things in the works. So it was making graboid eggs. We had a giant graboid practical mouth. So I think
Wow.
there were some days I jumped on, doing a little painting. So many hands make light work. So it was a lot of jumping around, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I learned a lot. So I did that for a while. Then things got quiet, and then eventually John, who was still doing CSI, called me, and he was able to have me come in and do what they called it. It was the motion. Not the motion capture, but we had these sort of probe camera shots, the famous CSI shot where somebody's been
Right.
shot and now we are the bullet and we're going in the hole to
Oh,
see
yeah, yeah.
what's happened. So there was an episode where somebody chokes on a Scrabble tile. I had to make a giant throat, and the camera was going to follow a little Scrabble tile on a
Oh,
string
wow.
going down the throat that lodges in the esophagus. Another time, John said, we need a womb. We're going to follow the umbilical cord, and we're in a womb that becomes skeletal. So it was like a sequence where the womb was going to decompose and be left with a trace of something on a pelvic bone. So it was like a lot of this stuff. It was like arts and crafts. So I'm painting latex and layers on a motorcycle helmet in my kitchen, making little veins with threads and wires, and then took that, put some Vaseline and KY jelly. We brought it in the studio, and then the probe camera comes down, and we shot it. It ended up in CSI.
What?
So
Wow.
yeah, so after that, John eventually went on to a spinoff called CSI New York, and he said, "What's your availability? I need somebody to kind of be my assistant." And that was a good 2 or 3 years of my life onto that. And then for a while, it was like every fake morgue in Hollywood. I feel like I was doing CSI, NCIS, Rizzoli and Isles, Body of Proof. If you're in a little room with the
Wow.
silver drawers and the blue gloves examining a corpse, I was there. So that was that was a good few years just doing lots of dead things. And of course, then you've got the crime scene with a fresh body. Then you've got you might have a flashback to the murder. You might have the body in the morgue, and then you might have the body after it's been cleaned and they've done the postmortem examination. So it might be 4 or 5 stages, and yeah, learning was just that was so much fun. A bit grim, but
What
really
would
cool.
what was the hardest thing about working on the CSI stuff for you personally?
At the time, the hardest thing for me with the CSI was when I started, I was able to work through a loophole where it's a union show, but the catch 22 is I'm not union. So how am I able to work on if I'm not union? As long as I wasn't touching anything that was living and breathing, I wasn't violating any makeup union rules. So I'd
Hmm.
be painting fake body parts. I might carry buckets of blood to set. Um, Running molds, things like that. We'd have a scene at the old LA Zoo where a tiger, kind of like the whole mafia thing, somebody's gotten rid of a body by throwing it in the tiger cage. So we had a real tiger that was wrangled, and it was batting around some like fake heads and fake torso that
Oh,
were made
wow.
out of foam, like a Nerf ball head. Just so that was pretty cool. I'd make the stuff, but it was frustrating to not be able to do makeup. And because of the politics of the business, there would always be somebody like picture a makeup artist who is in the union who maybe didn't want me there, would sabotage the situation. Like, hey, Brian, you're here doing makeup with us today. I set up a station for you if you want to come help us. And that was a trap. Had I gone in, picked up a brush, and touched a living
Oh,
person,
yeah.
they would then call the union. The production would be fined $2,000, and I might be get a slap on my wrist and be told like you're off the show. So when you're
Wow.
you're young and naive and you're thinking, I show up on time, I do a good job, I'm a nice guy, what could go wrong? Everything. If you're not so and so's friend, you
Oh,
know.
yeah.
So I learned, it was sort of a cautionary tale. I mean, I learned on a show like that the kind of makeup that I wanted to do, but I also learned, keep your wits about you, and you never know. I don't want to say trust no one, but not everybody's your friend. You just proceed with caution. Just
Sure.
just be aware of the politics. I'm
What?
I'm lucky that show taught me more about politics than makeup.
Oh, yeah, right. Huh. What movies would we have seen your work in?
Um, I got to work on the last two of the Hunger Games films, and by this I mean the Catching Fire, I believe.
Right. Yep.
A lot of times these movies you might have like 50 to 150 makeup artists that come in, so it
Oh,
might be
wow.
deep background makeup. But more recently, I worked on I did some work on The Substance in Paris.
Oh, wow.
There was a sequence I worked for Lou and Dave Elsey, and was able to come and execute this monster that was designed by um, Pierre Persson in France. They also had me as prosthetic supervisor in The Beekeeper with Jason Statham,
That's
which
awesome.
was just tremendous fun. We it was obviously a very violent film, but
Oh, yeah.
doing some of the gags, fingers that get cut off was a fun one.
Oh, yeah. This
Burn
all.
Bob, Yeah, I was there the day we shot that, and had to wrangle the fingers. You know, they were magnetic, so when the fingers got blown off, you know, we stick them back
Oh
on and
wow.
shoot it again. But so a lot of times it's problem solving. It's figuring out if we have to do this makeup effect, how can we do it on set uh, easily? You know, we don't want to necessarily keep somebody in the chair for hours and hours. How can you
Sure.
execute it easily, and how can you reset it? If you shoot it and it needs to be reshot a second, third time, what's the most efficient way to do that? So Beekeeper was another one. There's a movie called Cold Storage with Joe Keery and Liam Neeson that's coming out next year. I was prosthetic supervisor on that. Um, it's one of those things. If you go on IMDb, I think I have 200 credits, and I forget what I've done half the time. A lot of TV. I feel very lucky that I got to work on several of the Walking Dead shows, Game of Thrones. You know, to do dead things that's sort of on both sides of the pond. It was amazing. Um, yeah,
That's
thinking back.
awesome.
Uh, yeah, and you never know. A lot of times you work on something and you think it's going to be huge, and maybe it's a little bit of a sleeper. Maybe it's not a hit, and then things you kind of forget you worked on end up being a hit. So you never know. A lot of times the experience of working on the project is the reward, and if we happen to be part of a watchable film, that's a bonus.
Very nice, very nice. What are some of the trials and tribulations in the FX makeup world that most people won't see, like, or imagine, that you come across?
A lot of times you have there's a bit of gray area where if there's a certain gag, there might be debate on who's in charge. Is it going to be something the prop department is going to do? Is it makeup? Is it makeup effects? A lot of times you may have a makeup designer, that is their title, and they might be hired months after a prosthetic designer. So the prosthetic designer may do some designs and come up with some work and be ready to shoot some things. Then when the makeup designer comes on, they might say, "Well, I'm the designer and I didn't get to approve that, so now I need to approve it." So really, it depends on who you talk to. It could be separate departments, or they could get lumped together. But a lot of times there can be jockeying for position. If there's, like, let's say there's a dead body wrapped in carpet. Is that an actor wrapped in carpet? Is it a prosthetic fake foam dummy? And if so, is that made by prosthetics? Is it rented by the prop house? So figuring out who's in charge of what. Sometimes it's a very friendly conversation. There's sort of a delegation. You take care of that. You take care of that. Great. Everything's going to work. And other times it's a little bit of, well, that's my job. No, it's my job. So navigating that can be really tricky. And on a practical side, we did have we had a meeting on one of the CSIs one year because imagine this: we have fake blood, of course, fake blood on CSI, but you have fake blood that the prop department is putting on the knife, fake blood set design is or set deck is putting on the ground, fake blood on the costume, and fake blood on the prosthetic. If all four of these departments have bought different fake blood and it doesn't match, it's not going to work. So we might have to have a blood summit. Hey, everybody, we're going to be using HD red blood only, whether it's liquid or gel. This is our color. So sometimes it sounds very absurd, but figuring out, okay, what is the blood that we're going to be using? That was an actual memo that went out to make sure all of our bloods match. You can't just have one blood person that's doing it all because, like I said, one has to do costume, one does the set, one does props, then you have makeup. So sometimes it's making sure everybody is on the same page.
Right on. What did you do for Walking Dead?
I got a call when they were doing second season of Fear the Walking Dead, and that was shot down in Mexico. So I got pulled onto the crew for that, and that was they had full-time makeup artists that were working on that. But for the bigger days where we might have tons of walkers, they would have a bunch of us come down, and that was pretty cool. We were staying on a beach, Rosarito, staying at a hotel, having lobster and margaritas, and getting to do zombies. So I came down and I did a load of season 2 and a bit of season 3. Then I got a call to come and work on a couple episodes of Walking Dead when they were still shooting in Atlanta, the original series. And it was artists that I'd worked with on other shows, so it was great to come in and be with some of the original guys that started the Walking Dead series. And then I got a call a couple of years ago. They were doing a spin-off Walking Dead Daryl Dixon in Paris, and I live in London now, so it was an easy flight to come to
Oh wow,
Paris.
heck yeah.
Summer of 2023, I was over in Paris a few times doing zombies, and what was incredible about that is we were all over France, but we were in Paris a lot. So to actually be doing zombies outside the Louvre, it was like if you told like the 6-year-old version of me I was going to be doing that one day, I probably would have wet my pants.
Yeah, right.
So that was pretty cool. I had, it was wonderful working with that crew, and I was really grateful that they called me a few times. But just I remember kind of standing in Paris, just having done some zombie makeups, and we're shooting this one sequence, and I just thought, I'm right where I need to be in this world right now. Doesn't get any better than this. So it was pretty exciting to do really 3 different shows on and off for the same franchise in 3 different countries, if you think of it that way. So even if it was just a few episodes here and there, it's great working with that team. Greg Nicotero, he's been a friend for more than 20 years, and I'm always grateful when I get the call.
Very nice. So, as an FX artist, do you prefer to do clowns or zombies more? What would you prefer to work on? That's kind
No,
of a
no.
loaded
Better
question.
question.
Sorry.
Hang on. The better question is, have you done a zombie clown?
I don't think I've done a zombie clown. I was thinking about the other
Oh,
day because we did have an episode where we had to do zombies for Castle, and obviously because it's not a supernatural world, they're costume zombies. But I think in the episode it was kind of like, are they real zombies or are they just dressed up like zombies? But one of my colleagues, Mark, there was a zombie clown and he got to do that, and I was jealous. I was like, oh, I wanted to do that one. So, and I haven't, I didn't get to work on Zombieland, but I love the artist that did. So I
oh,
haven't done a zombie clown. That's probably the perfect hybrid, right? I have done clowns for a number of shows. I had a couple shows call me because they knew that I had some expertise on the clown makeups. So getting to come in and do clowns on Modern Family, Baskets, Children's Hospital for was that Comedy Central or Adult Swim? I should know at this point. Uh, and then there was another one. I did do some creepy clowns for a campaign they did for one of the seasons of American Horror Story. So it wasn't clowns that were on the show, but it was clowns that were in the billboards and DVD covers and stuff like that. So have done some creepy clowns. Did some clowns for CSI and CSI New York. I know there have been others, but that's always fun to come in and get to do clowns on a big show.
So, would you rather do zombie clowns or clowns as an FX artist? I know that's a loaded
I
question.
think I think for a long time, zombies were kind of my main thing. Like that was what I loved to do. I mean, I had a motorcycle, and my license plate was literally ZOMB. So that was my nickname when I was in the scooter club, embroidered on a jacket, Zombie for Brian. And I think I just feel like I've done that. I mean, I feel very lucky that to be able to say I've done White Walkers and Walkers. So I feel lucky to have done dead things on both sides of the pond. So a lot of times you get to a point where you feel like you can tick the box, like check that off your bucket list, did that. So in a lot of ways, I feel like I'm getting back into clowning. I've always done clowns, but challenging myself now with different kinds of clown makeup and teaching clowns, and clowning has exploded so much. I mean, you have this idea of kind of the traditional clowns, but now there's burlesque clowns, there's scare clowns, there's so many different branches of clowning now, and I feel like it's important to kind of recognize it's all relevant. It's a lot of times clowning is being able to read the room, to know your audience. What you do for a 5-year-old might not be the same as you do for a cirque type show late at night. So one of the things I love when it comes to clown makeup is knowing this makeup is appropriate for this audience at this time. This is appropriate for this, and why. For instance, if somebody says to me, well, I'm a scare clown, but I'd like to do birthday parties. Well, if you have blood and vomit on your costume, you're probably not going to get booked for many birthday parties. But if you clean up, you can become a different character. So I realized even when I do clown makeup, I might have one character that I love for family friendly, and then another character that's not necessarily scary, but I do some more carnival type skills like fire breathing and stilt walking. So I have a slightly different makeup I do for that. So it's interesting to get to do clown makeups now that fit different audiences and different scenarios, if that makes sense. So the challenges I'm enjoying lately is really getting back into clown makeup.
Right on. So how did you like some of your special effects prop type stuff? Like, how do you come up with some of that stuff? Like, you talked about taking the motorcycle helmet and using it. Like,
Well, it's I mean, I guess they say necessity is the mother of invention. Some of the
yeah,
coolest stuff I've had to come up with is when I'm completely broke and I've got a garage full of parts and junk and arts
there
and
you
crafts, and I just think I can MacGyver this. I can make this happen. So when I got into for like fire flow, for instance, a lot of times people, if they're doing working with fire, they have staffs that might be lit on both ends, or sometimes it's the fire poi that they're swinging, fire juggling. I realized I wanted to have a carnival hammer, like one of those giant mallets, because I thought it fit a clown character.
go. Nice.
So I had an aluminum drum that I put on the end of a stick that I made, and made it black and white. I'm sorry, black and red striped. So I just made a circus prop with stuff that I had lying around. And even a friend of mine, I showed it to him. I told him I had this idea, and 2 days later, I showed it to him, and he said, "Well, that was quick." So sometimes just figuring it out. I mean, when you're doing a lot of arts and crafts and projects and things, you end up a bit of a hoarder. Like I've got a boxes of fabric and boxes of different glue and boxes of chunks of foam. So when you're able to start using up the stuff, go through your inventory. I've got a bit of this. I got a bit of this. I got a bit of this. I've made a prop that's functional, and I freed up space in the workshop. So it's exciting to just kind of just figure out what you can do on your own. There's a lot of great stuff out there on the market you can buy, but if you can make a one of a kind thing nobody has. When I was relatively young, my mom taught me a little bit of sewing. So a lot of times I make my own clown costumes. And once I started getting into some fire arts, I was conscious of I'm going to use fabrics that are not necessarily combustible. You want to use natural fabrics like cotton, Kevlar, leather, and wool. If you use a synthetic, think of it like napalm on your skin. Should I set
Oh
myself
yeah.
alight? That's going to be bad and melt to me. But if I get a little bit of fire on something made of cotton, it might burn, but it's not going to explode.
Right.
So it's been exciting. I've had people say to me, where'd you get your stilt walking pants? I made them. I'm like, what? You made those? So it's not that hard, but it's kind of like reading an IKEA manual. You go through the instructions, get a sewing machine, you make it. So it's exciting for me to think that I've made my own stuff, knowing that it's not going to set on fire when I decide to fire breathe or spin fire sticks.
Right on. So
That's awesome.
your so your clown characters, you have multiple of them, right?
Yeah, I've got two clown characters that I kind of stick with now. Blotto is the one that goes back 25 years, and that's kind of gone from kind of a grumpy clown to a little more family friendly, a little more naive. So it's been a lot of fun, and he's got bright green under his eyes and the green wig and a red coat with a purple collar, very very colorful, very basic. I do some balloon animals, basic juggling, things like that. But then I decided I want to do a character uh, Biggles. I went to Burning Man for the first time about 12 years ago. And the nickname I got because I had an aviator cap on at the time and a curly mustache, somebody named me Biggles. Biggles is a World War I aviator in British fiction. So I kind of fit that look. Gradually, that became a clown character. And then what I wanted to do is have some psychology behind it. Imagine if my character of Blotto has gone to Burning Man. Maybe he's experienced some life. He's seen some things. He's not necessarily dark or evil, but he's just a little wiser. Maybe he's a little more daring. He's not afraid to get up on stilts, so he's 10 feet in the air, or not afraid to breathe fire. So that's how that happened. And it's been fun. I've actually shot some promo videos for some classes I've taught where Brian, myself, is having a conversation with Blotto, and then Biggles turns up. So you film it in a way. So basically, it's 3 different characters, but they're all me. And the irony is Blotto is intimidated by Biggles because he's on stilts and he's kind of, he's just not sure about it. And he doesn't realize this is kind of the flip side of the coin. This is you through a different prism, through a different eye. And he's not, like I said, he's not evil, but it's just a different environment. The act that I would do with Biggles is appropriate for Burning Man or maybe certain kind of Halloween events, but not necessarily what I would do for a parade or a birthday party. So it's fun having different faces, different skills, and different personas that are kind of a reflection of each other, but for different scenarios.
So that video,
but 2 characters for now. Yeah.
That video you're talking about confused me. I thought it was honestly 3 different people at first. So
that was the point. That's what I love about it, because
That's
there's when it comes to clown makeup, there's so many different spins on it, especially because we have different types of clowns now. So a lot of people, they might do the Light-a-Goost, where it's mostly like a nose or just a very small amount of paint. Because the clowns that were a huge influence on me growing up were such a transformation. Like if I saw Bozo or I saw Ronald, I couldn't tell what they looked like underneath that makeup. It was such a transformation. So I wasn't necessarily trying to hide under heavy makeup, but it was more exciting to be a clown that was a transformation. To the point now, like when I've gone to Burning Man or when I've been at clown camp as Blotto or as Biggles, I might meet somebody that I've hung out with for 3 days and they see me as Brian and they have no idea it's me. They'll be like, "Oh, what's your name?" And I'm like, "I'm your friend, the clown." And they're like, "What? You're that guy?" So I didn't realize that it was such a Clark Kent versus Superman thing, but it is. And it's kind of funny. Like I said, I'm not necessarily trying to hide in a clown makeup, but it's cool that it's such a transformation. Those are the makeups that I'm kind of drawn to. So my point is, I'm happy that video sold the idea that these are 3 different people.
Oh yeah. So
I hope to do more with that.
I got a question.
Yeah.
As in the clowning, have you ever been pied or pied anybody for birthdays?
I have actually. The most recent time I was at Mooseburger Clown Camp in Minnesota, and we have a pie fight day. So there's a real art to it. Obviously, there's some safety involved. If you haven't done it before, it's easy to pie somebody that, or the inclination might be to pie somebody that isn't ready, or maybe you do it wrong. Maybe you hit them in the face, and then you could risk breaking their nose. So there's more of a gentle art to it, and there's almost a code like, you're ready for some pie? Let me have it. So you make sure whoever you're going to pie knows you're about to pie them and is ready to receive. So I have been hit with pies, and I have thrown pies. So that's exciting. And that's another thing that ties into makeup. When I did my makeup and I used powdered grease paint, I was able to clean the pie off and reset it relatively easy, to the point where even Patricia, who runs Mooseburger, said, how'd you get that off and protect your makeup? You could have done a Ringling show if you're able to do that. She was just impressed that I kept the makeup relatively intact despite having taken a pie in the face.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Very nice, very nice. How did you get involved with Clowns International?
That was a real turning point. Clowns International, when I first did my Blotto character in early 2000, around that time that I was sculpting the prosthetics, a friend of mine told me, "Do you know about the Clowns Church?" I was like, "What's the Clowns Church?" Well, Clowns International, the first Sunday in February every year, they have the Joseph Grimaldi Clowns Church service. So basically, it's a church in North London that fills with clowns, and the whole day is devoted to honoring the clowns that have passed. It's singing, it's show before and after. So I went, not in clown makeup, just as a spectator, and I couldn't believe I was seeing an actual church service full of clowns. Even the minister, Raleigh Bain, had a red nose. So I was kind of blown away.
Wow.
And Clowns International, they were behind that. So Joseph Grimaldi, considered the first modern, well, the first clowning as we know it kind of started with him, with the grease paint that he would do for pantomimes on stage in London. So he's buried at that church. There's a stained glass window devoted to him. So honoring the original clown has kind of been a big part of Clowns International. So I've gone to the church service several times since. And Clowns International, if anybody's familiar with the Clown Egg Registry, that started with a guy named Stan Bolt in the 30s and 40s. The idea being that he would take a chicken egg and paint clown faces on that, and that becomes an unofficial copyright or trademark. So when that egg goes in a museum, no one can copy your makeup. It's a way of honoring your makeup is uniquely
Wow.
yours. So that tradition has been passed on. And the fifth artist to be the clown egg artist, Julie Proctor, is doing it now. And I was able to get my very own egg of Blotto this year. So I have an egg that's officially part of the clown registry for Clowns International, and I have a copy that I get to keep. And I never thought that would be a thing. It's relatively easy if somebody wanted to follow up and send photos and contact Clowns International. I think more and more people are pursuing. It was sort of a mythical thing, like, is that they don't really have clown eggs? Well, they do. So people are kind of catching on to it, and there's more eggs being made now. But as I was having a conversation with Julie, and I've obviously known some of the famous clowns, or the more well-known clowns in Clowns International, we started talking, and she said, "Have you thought about becoming part of the organization?" And I didn't. It didn't even occur to me that there was a need for that. So I've had some conversations now with the president and chairman of Clowns International, and they're looking to have me take on the role of educational director for Clowns International. So as I
Very nice.
teach,
Wow.
that's a perfect fit, but also to help propel clowning. What resources do clowns need? You want to learn stilt walking? This is the guy to go see. You want to learn fire or something that's a little more alternative? This is a very safe school for that. Juggling equipment, unicycle, magic, you name it. It's kind of fun to be able to put together those resources and help people that want to do more than just a face paint. I think all of us, at any point in clowning, you kind of feel like a wannabe. You kind of feel like, I can talk the talk, but I literally want to walk the walk. So I want to be on 4-foot stilts. So it's exciting to take on that role and get to know more of Clowns International, and hopefully keep it going. Their 80th anniversary of the Clowns Church is next year, so hopefully it's going to be a big celebration, and I'm kind of happy to be a part of it and keep it going.
Very cool. What is so what are your thoughts on, obviously as technology is moving on, your thoughts of practical versus virtual effects? Do you think the virtual effect is pushing away the practical, or do you think we're still strong with practical?
I think there was sort of a fear at one point that digital effects were going to take over, that there was something you can do. It wasn't necessarily more cost effective to do the digital effects. It was more like something you could do in post. So you didn't have to commit to a design, you could do it later. I think there was a bit of backlash. People realized they didn't want to just have digital. Maybe as far as the technology has come, there's something about the color or the gravity or the movement that isn't 100% convincing. It's that uncanny valley where you still feel like you might be watching Shrek or Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It's not
Right.
seamless. There was sort of a swing the other way where, well, we do want practical. We want as much practical as possible. So I think when it works, it's a perfect fusion of the two. A lot of times you have a practical effect and it might have a bit of digital enhancement. And the digital artists I know love doing that. They love the practical, but they're happy to kind of push it along or maybe give it something that you
Sure.
couldn't do otherwise. You know, one of the things, especially with zombies, it's easy to add material, but it's hard to take material away. For instance, if your nose rots off, Well, unless somebody's missing their nose, that's a hard thing to do practically. So we might paint the nose with the green screen or motion capture
Oh yeah.
dots. And then, and so it's a practical zombie makeup, but the final bit of an eye missing or the nose missing, that's a digital enhancement. So I think when the departments can work closely together, you can get some really beautiful effects. So I don't think it's a threat either way. I think there are a lot of productions that are using both effectively, and I love being on those shows. We did a lot of that for Cold Storage, this kind of horror sci-fi that's coming out next year. Um,
Nice.
the digital artist on that loved the practical effects we were working on, and a lot of the digital might have replaced a lot of our effects, but it was still a really good collaboration. So I think that hopefully we stay in that direction where they're working together.
Oh,
All right, all right.
very cool.
1 second, I'm sorry. All right, go ahead.
No biggie. Um, well, usually he asks this question, but I'll ask it. As a clown,
Oh, yep.
um, what's the fastest you've ever had to put your makeup on, and what was the reason why?
Ooh. Um, Usually, if I have to do my makeup fast, it's because I'm running late. I think the fastest I've ever done it was in about 10 minutes. Usually, if I have to make a train or I have to get an event or something like that. Um, One of the things when it comes to clown makeup, one of the things I teach is no material is obsolete, whether it's foam or silicone. Everything is there for a reason. So if you're doing a 12 to 16-hour day working on a ringling show, you want heavily powdered grease paint, and you might have touch ups if you eat, etc. But if I'm just doing a photo shoot, or I know that I'm going to do a clown gig and I'm only going to need my makeup on for an hour, I might use water based makeup. So anytime I've done a fast makeup, like a 10-minute makeup, the shapes are the same, the colors are the same, but I'm going to use opaque water base. If I needed to have it on for 12 hours or more, it might sweat off, it might wash off. It's not going to be as bulletproof, but I can do it in a pinch and I can do it easy. And sometimes you do a makeup with the notion that you want to be able to clean it up easy. You know, if I do a water-based makeup, I can just take a wet wipe, done. Whereas if I do traditional grease paint, I might need Johnson's baby shampoo, cold cream, baby oil, something that's really going to break down the grease. Then you need hot washcloth. Sometimes you got to do a makeup and you don't have access to a sink. You don't have hot water. So how are you going to get that off at the end of the day? All these things play a factor in it. But that's my long answer. But yeah, a 10-minute aqua color water based clown makeup can work in a pinch. I've done that.
What about 5 minutes?
5 minutes. If I, yeah, like our challenge coming up. Um, the way I've said this to a few of my colleagues before is I can do the same makeup 100 times. Let's say I've blotto, I've done many times. There are days where it's just smooth. You just right out the gate, every brush stroke is right. You just feel like I got this. The flow is there today. And then there's days where it's like every single step, like a Monday morning, you haven't had your coffee. Every single step is like, oh no, that shape is too big. Oh, I slipped. Oh, now I got to clean that up, and you just hate it. So there are days where the same makeup could take me an hour and 15 minutes, or it could take me 25 minutes. It just kind of depends on how much flow you've got that day. So yeah, if I had to do a 5-minute version, hopefully it'd be really in the groove and having a good flow that day, and it would happen. But yeah, there's days where I'm just like you almost want to wipe it off and start over. You almost want to cry. Okay. Yeah, I'm still. Yeah, the challenge. I didn't know. I didn't know the parameters. I mean, obviously, when you gave us the rules and we approved, but I was like, ooh, that is tough, because I know there's a lot of clowns that they're really happy with their look and they love to submit it. But if they knew that they had to do it in 5 minutes, that can be terrifying. You know,
That's part of the humor.
yeah. I mean, yeah. So I love that idea, but man, that was a challenge where I thought, God, I don't know if I could do that.
So we've had
Yeah.
professional ringling clowns and professional clowns tell us, 5-6 minutes. So that's where we came up with that number.
Yeah. If I were doing an Auguste makeup, and I'm not saying it's easier, a light Auguste or an Auguste I could probably do in that time frame. but a full white face. And I try to prescribe to the idea that if you're a white face, it's not just a little mask, all skin visible, with maybe the exception of your fingertips because you got to twist balloons, should be white. So whether you're wearing long gloves, whether you're wearing a collar, if I had to do a makeup in 5-6 minutes, I would probably do my Biggles character rather than Blotto because that's just white with black features and a red nose. And I wear a skull cap that just has this much of my face exposed. So it is being able to do this, but still be completely white. So I might do that for fun just to see if I can. Can I do a 6-minute Biggles effectively?
There you go. All right.
And I know how
My
I would do that.
my question for you now, if you're allowed, what is one of the funniest pranks you've seen behind the scenes of any of the shows or movies you've done?
Oh man, by far, by far. And I've heard some elaborate pranks that happened kind of before my time. But the best thing I've ever witnessed was this makeup artist named Michael Blake. He's kind of kind of an angry sheriff, great guy, but he has like a real kind of angry sheriff cowboy hat vibe. And he he did this thing he called it the Lynn Reynolds hand cream. Now Lynn Reynolds was a makeup artist back before my time, but there's an acrylic water-based adhesive called Prosaid or Prosaid, and it looks just like lotion, like white lotion. It's not. It's used as a medical grade adhesive. So you can put on
Oh
clown
no.
noses with it. You could glue a colostomy bag on with it. I mean, it's tenacious stuff. So it comes out in almost like a mayonnaise consistency, or you can get one that's almost like a milk consistency. So if you've got the thickened one that's kind of whipped, like a mayonnaise, imagine you have that in a bottle. Somebody says, have you got any hand lotion? You give them some hand lotion. I saw Michael do this to somebody on set. You
Oh
give them some
no.
hand lotion, and it's this cream. And as you start working it in, as it starts drying, it goes from white to clear, and it literally becomes glue. So at that point, you say to somebody, here, let me give you a tissue. And they start doing that, and it's like being tarred and feathered. Now they have little bits of Kleenex that are glued all over their claw that's stuck together in there. And then the only way to get it off is like alcohol or baby oil. I mean, it does not wash off with water. That's the whole point. It's a pretty decent adhesive. So
Oh my God.
if you do it to somebody, I mean, you got to be ready. They're going to get mad as hell. So to actually see that done was kind of amazing. I don't think I have the nerve. I might do it to somebody that I've known a long time, knowing that they would take it in stride, and I would help them clean up afterwards. But that was pretty intense to watch somebody literally, and because it's almost like a slow burning prank. Because as it goes on, they're like, something's confusing here. Why are my hands stuck together? And then panic sets in, and then tissue just makes it worse. It's amazing to watch.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Well, get
Yeah,
back to a little bit of the clowning. Where do you see clowning in 2025 versus where it's come from?
Wow, clowning in 2025. I think we sort of had something the media latched onto about 9 years ago where they were saying clowns were hiding in the woods, and there was sort of an anti-clown thing that happened. And this is shortly before the remake of It came out. So 9 years ago was not a great time to be a clown. I think since then we've turned a corner where there's kind of a dialogue happening where scary clowns are talking to traditional clowns, and traditional clowns might be recognizing more the burlesque clowns. Ultimately, I feel like now there's so many outlets for clowns, and so many clowns are sort of informed about the different genres that are going on. I feel like we're going through a real renaissance. Really, since the beginning of this year, I think it's an exciting time to be a clown. Clown is not a dirty word. If you learn your craft and you respect the act, ultimately, most of the time, it's a profession. And if somebody pays you to be a clown, whether they need a hug because they brought you into a hospital, whether they need a laugh, whether they need a distraction from the everyday, whether they need a scare because you're working at a haunted house, I think it's all relevant. And it's knowing to be the clown you need to be in the moment for that audience. So there's a wonderful documentary that's actually coming out. It's getting released on streaming next week called American Clown. My friend Guilford Adams made, and I went to a screening earlier at a festival this year, and it addresses sort of all facets of clowning today, and really addresses where has clowning come from, what happened to it, and where could it go. And I think you can't, whatever kind of clown you are, you can't watch this and not feel a tremendous sense of hope. I think seeing that really, it didn't sort of, I always knew that I was a clown, but it made me excited to not only be a clown, but share clowning and have other people be excited to be clowns. So I think we're at a really great time for clowns. And I think it's only growing. It's an
It,
ancient art form, and it's not going anywhere.
we heard great things about that movie from Chad with Red Nose Factory.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I was at the premiere with him, and we just had a fantastic time. Yeah, absolutely.
Right on. Well, we're getting to that point in the show where we're running out of time. So, with that said, couple more questions real quick. Number one, what advice would you give an upcoming makeup artist or somebody who wants to be a clown? And the other one to end it would be, if they want to learn from you, where can they find you?
All right. If somebody wants to get into clowning and they wanna learn makeup, I recommend understand as many different kinds of makeup as you can. And by that, I mean know the difference between water based, cream makeup, grease paint, and even alcohol based makeups. Know what your makeup has to do. Are you going to be a clown that's just doing TikTok videos? Nothing wrong with that. Or are you going to be a performing clown that has to be in makeup for 12 to 16 hours? Know what makeup you need for your face. And I also recommend eventually, if you're becoming a clown, you want to have a character, you will find that eventually, but practice as much as you can. Do a different face. You don't like it, try something different. I would recommend looking at, like, do your homework, check out different ringling clowns, check out clowns that inspire you. What did they do? um, know that certain shapes might be scary versus more friendly, and why. Decide the kind of clown you want to be. Do your homework and just practice. Paint your face as much as you can until you start finding what works. And then the second question, the second part of the question.
That was,
Tell me again.
if they want to learn from you, how do they get in contact with you?
Well, if you want to learn from me, I just did a course that's going to be available online through Studio Standard Makeup in Chicago. So if you go to, I believe, studiostandardmakeup.com, there'll be information coming out hopefully over the next couple months. I'm not sure when we're ready to launch. We shot the material in August, but that'll be available. I'm also
Sweet.
available if you go to my Instagram at BEKINNEY, usually you can message me, and I do private classes. I'm based in London, but I'm in Los Angeles right now. I travel a lot, and I started Full Slap Clown Alley. Full Slap Clown Alley at Full Slap Clown Alley is actually Instagram. So right now it's sort of a virtual alley, but as I get more into education and more clowns are interested, I think we will have sort of classes on the move. I did a class in April in Liverpool, England. And the more demand there is, the more chance there is for me to come in and share what I've got, whether it's Zoom or whether it's in person. I'm happy to share. So there's a few outlets right now to learn from me, and I think there's going to be more.
Sweet.
very nice.
All right, folks, you heard it here. Like to thank our guests for coming in, thank our viewers for tuning in, and until next time, we'll see you down the road.
Thank you, guys.